What's going on, guys? This is Joe Young coming at you another video for the week. So this week is the focus on the Planet tank in the living room. Finally got my part in on Friday. Was able to test fit all the pipings and actually everything fit perfectly. So the only thing really I had to do was really cut the PVC pipe and then glue it all together. Initially, when I was actually planning this out, I actually was going to put a ball valve in the middle somewhere to kind of break up the flow so that just in case if the pump was too strong that I can adjust it. But looking at the size of the pump, I don't think that actually I would have any trouble with the flow. If anything, I have to probably turn it up in flow so that I can kind of get the flow rate that I want. Now, if I put the ball valve on the outside, the pipe will kind of just not lay flush to the actual light stand. So I decided to kind of maybe opt and put it in the inside of the cabinet. The only thing is if I put it in the inside and actually glue it together, I can't remove it at all because there's no parts in there that actually disassembles. So this time around, I didn't use any unions or didn't use any ball valves for this setup. Once everything was glued, cut, and set in place, I let everything dry for a few minutes and then I went ahead and started filling up the tank. The fill process for a larger tank takes some time, so I went ahead and just filled it as fast as possible. Not too worried about the substrate being disturbed just because I'm going to have probably the whole week or more to let the substrate settle, and also if there's any debris, junk like that, I'm going to go ahead and net that out anyways. Also in this tank, I did lay a small layer of new ADA soil on top, so it does have a couple of random debris and stuff that's going to float from the new soil. I went ahead and just net everything in there out so that the overflow filter doesn't get clogged with a bunch of that stuff. Once the tank was full, it was time to test out my piping skills, my gluing skills, and see if everything works properly. Of course, I used the aqua lifter to start the siphon of the overflow box. So once we powered up the S1 pump, I noticed that we can actually dial up the flow a little bit on this pump versus the M1. The M1, we were barely making like just 1 bar on that pump. So what I found was 3 bars was perfect for this pump and actually the setup. I could have done 4 bars, but 4 bars was really pushing it. 4 bars would have been exactly what the M1 pump was like with 1 bar. It was kind of just insane where like the overflow box seems like it was just like overworking itself, where it was just like trying to barely keep up with the pump there. Of course, I let the system run for a few hours, checking once in a while or on occasion, making sure there's no leaks. And thankfully there was no leaks, so everything glued and actually sealed correctly. Normally when I do these brand new setups with plumbing, there's always bound to have some sort of leak or some sort of like fault in there. It's just kind of known. If you don't have something, I would be more worried, to be honest. But sometimes you get lucky, and you know, this time half of the plumbing was already done, the other half was brand new, so I knew those part was done correctly because I was like gluing the crap out of that. So definitely that was cemented really well. Then finally, just to kind of touch up some of the cord management, I went ahead and zip tied some of the cords along the actual stand just to make it a little bit more nice. And of course, the next day, everything finally settled in. The temperature of the tank finally got up, and then also all the debris has settled on the substrate. So right now the plants are really beat up and really not in the best shape. Initially, when I set up a quick tank for plants, I literally threw all the stems just kind of floating into this tank. And a lot of them were kind of caught underneath each other, and a lot of those melted away. But the ones that survived were the ones at the top, and even the ones at the top, they started going immersed. And now what I'm really stuck with is like half of the stems are kind of dead and the other half is kind of like immersed. So I went ahead and trimmed off like some of the bad leaves and kind of just planted those down. So the plants in here that you're seeing are probably not going to be the permanent plants that are going to be set up in this tank. So right now I'm just trying to save a little bit of every species to make sure that they're actually going to survive and not die completely in the other tank. But most likely I'm going to actually put more foreground plants in this setup. Since this is a show tank, I want the Ultima Angels and Discus to come out in the front more and also display them more and also let them kind of swim a lot more around the tank versus the previous build. In this setup, it's probably going to be more foreground plants, so it's going to be shorter, allowing the Ultima Angels and Discus more room to swim and actually to show them a lot better. In the previous setup, I had a lot more stems, kind of like 50-50. I think I'm going to probably do 75 foreground and then 25% in the back, especially since the tank is the centerpiece of the living room. I want them to actually display the plants and the fish. So the tank's probably gonna take about a week or 2 weeks to cycle since we did add in some new substrate into the actual tank. I did end up using established bacteria from another system so that it can cycle a little bit faster, but most likely it's gonna go through a mini cycle anyways. Finally, I have one tank down and actually established correctly. I do have a lot more tanks in the upcoming few weeks, few months probably, that I need to set up. So if you guys aren't subscribed yet, make sure you guys are subscribed. And like always, until next time guys, peace.